Good afternoon. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. My name is Jeremy Goldberg. I'm your host of today. I'm the president, quarterback at League Apps, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this special NextUp town hall focused just on how pro teams are responding to this COVID-19 crisis. We've got an incredible group of panelists here today to be part of this conversation, and this will be a conversation. Really, we wanted to bring people across different professional sports who are focused on youth and local sports a chance to surface their ideas, their challenges, their opportunities, and again, figure out how collectively as a community we can get through this and make youth and local sports even better than ever before. Some of you may have been part of some of these NextUp town halls that we've done over the past few weeks. And this is the first kind of invitation only that we've ever done focused just on a specific segment. And we wanted to focus on professional teams because we recognize the important leadership role that you and the professional leagues have with respect to what is happening in youth and local sports. That role was true before, and it's even more true now. And as I said on these conversations in the past few weeks, we're at a time when we're social distancing, it's actually when it's more important than ever that we think about community and about coming together. And I think that's nowhere more true and evident than the power of the people that are on today's conversation. I know this is difficult for you all. It's certainly true of all the small businesses that are independent, but certainly working as part of the professional teams, you're not only dealing with the dynamics of the specific area of responsibility you have, but the larger questions that exist about when games are going to be played and how games are going to be played as well, and how that's impacting all of your colleagues in addition to yourself. So we recognize that and acknowledge that, but we also kind of recognize that there is an opportunity in every crisis. And I'm more convinced than ever before, especially with this group, the potential that exists as we go through this. One of the things that I'm struck by is I've talked to hundreds of organizations and professional teams included over the past few weeks, is that great organizations never waste a crisis. And when I think about, the time I've spent, for example, with Jeff and the Warriors, and we studied the strength in numbers concept, there's adversity that every team faces. You know that that's true for the team that you had this year. And the reality is, how does a great organization respond to that? How do they not waste that crisis, right? I think there's also this notion that necessity is the mother of all innovation, that how you respond to this, what you're learning, will ultimately make your organization stronger. So how do you take advantage of that? And what does that look like? And I think we'll hear how the Dolphins and how the Warriors and how the Dodgers are responding to what's going on. And I think it's also recognizing the critical role that sports is going to play in helping bring this country back. And I think that's true at the professional level and the youth level. And so the people that we're speaking with and to today, I think are at the heart of that conversation, because people look at sports as an escape. They look at it as an opportunity to understand how to respond to adversity, how to respond to challenges. And I think people need that more than ever before. I know the other day I was watching Miracle, the movie about the hockey game. I actually thought I was watching real sports. I felt the adrenaline going again, even though it was only a TV made for event, made for movie. So it's one of these things where I think people appreciate its absence. They know what they're missing, and they're going to be that much more appreciative and eager when they can get back to this. I've been reading this Muhammad Ali biography. I'm nearly done. And I've embraced this theory of survive to thrive, which is something that I don't know if Muhammad Ali actually said, but I suspect he would have said it since it's rhymed. And I think it represents so much of what he managed to navigate over the course of his career, right? How do we survive this situation? And ultimately, how do we thrive through it as well? And I've been sharing a different quote every week about that from Muhammad Ali that's inspired me when I think about what it means to kind of overcome adversity, what it means to survive and thrive. And the quote I want to kind of frame today's conversation is this: it's not bragging if you can back it up, right? It's not bragging if you can back it up. I certainly think that's true when I think about the talented folks that are going to share their perspectives from Jeff and RaShauna and Claire's perspective. But I think it's true of all of you all, that the resources, the capabilities, the leadership that each unique sports team has the opportunity to offer is so critical that it's not bragging about those capabilities, that those are legitimate capabilities that I think are going to be more important than ever before. So I hope I'll bring to this conversation a sense of what's happening across the youth sports landscape. What I see are some of those trends, challenges, opportunities that I see grassroots organizations are facing. But I specifically want to make sure we focus the conversation today about what professional teams can take away from this conversation. And this is just the start of the conversation. So one of the ways that everyone here can participate is to go on the questions tab on the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side. And if you click the questions tab, go ahead and submit that, because that will be really informing the conversation that we'll be having with this group. The second thing is that the conversation will continue afterwards. We have a Slack group that is just set up for people that are in youth sports as professionals. And so it's an opportunity to really go in there and share your ideas and hear from what other organizations are doing, whether it's pro teams, whether it's grassroots organizations. So we'll make sure that we post that in the chat so you can see exactly how to sign up for an organization like that. And we'll talk about at the end of this some things that we have going on that I think will be relevant for you. So as I embrace this Muhammad Ali analogy, just remember champions get knocked down, but it's really a question of how we bounce back, and that's true of the youth sports industry, true of the organizations that we have here today. So I'm eager to kind of jump in. I want to really help profile what each of these organizations have done and is doing, and then again we'll turn it to questions that I have and that the community has as well. So I'm going to start and put Jeff on the spot. Jeff from the Golden State Warriors, he's the senior director of youth basketball. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Jeff over our years and working with the NBA and the great work that the junior NBA is doing. And Jeff has been with the Warriors for 22 years. So it's amazing, I believe it's true, Jeff, that there are people that went through your program as a camper that are now sending their own kids through the program, which is a testament to the longevity and the impact of your program, not just your age. So we appreciate your leadership and all that you bring. I know you're looked to by NBA teams and all across the pro teams about what you've done in terms of building out this footprint. And certainly that's true of the Warriors basketball camp. It's true of the way that you think about the Junior Warriors Basketball League. It's also true of the way you're innovating when you think about the facility and the ideas that you had that are on temporary pause, but I know you're eager to get back to. And I should mention that you had a pretty good game too. I think I've seen some of those old clips when you played at San Francisco State University as a 3-year starter and co-captain. So I appreciate you bringing that leadership to today's conversation. So Jeff, maybe just for everyone's sake, you can help explain a little bit about what the Warriors are doing with respect to youth in general and in normal times. What does the strategy look like? What do the programming look like? And then we'll talk about how you're specifically responding to this crisis.
Well, first off, I just want to thank you, Jeremy, for your leadership and the leadership of League Apps for putting these town halls together. I've been able to check out a few and definitely got some great insights from all the different conversations, and very happy to be a part of today's conversation. Thanks for the kind words about our program, and thank you for making me feel old. I appreciate that. But we have been at this for quite a while now. As you mentioned, my 22nd season with the Warriors. We started our camps back in the summer of 2000. We had 4 camps that summer. Now we're up to 70 plus camps a year, 7,000 plus campers over the course of the year. That on top of our Junior Warriors Basketball League. So, from early on, we wanted to really make an impact on youth basketball in the Bay Area. And as you can imagine, when I started with the Warriors, 22 years ago, it was a much different team than the 5-year run that you guys saw us in the finals over these past few years. But I think what really, drove us to have success is developing our program during those lean years. When people didn't want to be affiliated with the Warriors. So our program really had to be strong for parents to continue to enroll their kids in camps. We wanted to make sure every kid that came through those doors, on a Monday, when they left on Friday, they were feeling better about themselves as players, that they were falling in love with the game of basketball. For me and for my staff, the game has done so much for us. So, we've always felt like our role is to help enable the game to have that same kind of impact on the kids that come through our doors and develop them into lifelong fans of the game. If they became Warrior fans, that was gravy on top. But more importantly, we wanted out there on the court participating and really falling in love with the game. You touched on our facility, and one of the great things that is associated with our team moving to San Francisco is we had, one of the largest practice facilities in the NBA in Oakland, and this was the facility that, Stephen Curry spent 10 years of his career in, developing himself into a championship player and a 2-time MVP, and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and all these guys. So kind of the silver lining with the move to San Francisco was that our team, youth basketball side, after 20 years of developing our program, would kind of inherit that facility and have it strictly dedicated to youth basketball skill development. So we were just getting ready to unveil that facility on March 11th. And the night before, we got the call that we could not hold that grand opening event because of everything that was going on with the crisis and the virus and everything. So we put that on hold and kind of pumped our brakes for the time being. And over the course of the last month, really been trying to, put everything together on how we're going to operate when we come out of this. And we're really excited about what we can do in that facility and how we can shape youth basketball. But now we're looking at it as a more gradual approach as to, we won't be able to hit the ground running as we once thought we were, but it's something that we're really excited about. And we'll be the only team in the NBA that has their own facility dedicated to youth basketball skill development. So we're excited about that.
So Jeff, as you confront, you have these great plans. You have this program that I think was successful for the reasons that you outlined, and the commitment to the quality that you're providing, the relationships you've built. How have you responded? So first is you obviously had to postpone the opening of the facility. That has a huge impact. I know how long and hard you worked on that. But talk to us about what are the ways that you've approached this situation where there's a lot of uncertainty. How have you dealt with that uncertainty, and what are the ways you're trying to be relevant and impactful with respect to what's happening in the Bay Area?
So the immediate impact on us was, we had to cancel all of our spring programming all through the end of May. And for us, we run 10-week-long spring break camps throughout the Bay Area, a number of one-day clinics, and a variety of other programming that we were going to get started at our facility during that time. So to kind of put all that to a halt and then shift gears to really thinking about, how are we going to come out of this? What's a parent's mindset going to be coming out of the crisis we're in right now? How likely would they be in signing up their kid for a camp with, 150 players and sharing basketballs and sharing water fountains and all that kind of stuff? So we're really right now, it's a path that none of us have been down before. So we're really trying to share ideas, to brainstorm, to talk as a team about what are the different options that parents are going to feel, most comfortable with coming out of this. And if that means we have to shrink the size of our camps, to do extra steps to make sure we have a safe environment for those kids to come in through our doors, all those little things we're going to make sure we do. In the meantime, right now, one thing we've launched, and this has definitely propelled us into it, is we're now doing Instagram live workouts through our Academy handle. So twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have a 30-minute workout that's being ran by our coaches. It's live. We have a number of our campers that are tuning in each and every workout, 300 to 400 campers each workout, getting to see some of their coaches that they see at camp, people that they've developed relationships with. And really just kind of break up the monotony of their everyday situation right now. Sure, they may have some schoolwork they're dealing with in the morning and maybe can't get outside or to places that they typically go, but we've developed some workouts that they can do at home in their garage. My daughter even does them in the living room. So typically all you need is a basketball and a bottle of water, and our team is able to put together a great workout for our participants for at least that 30 minutes of those days. So that's one of the things we're doing right now. And some of the ideas we're thinking about and talking about is, could we create, a virtual camp experience where if parents are hesitant in sending their kids to a physical camp, could we set up a camp that can be done, digitally, and our coaches be able to see those kids and interact with them through their screens and give them feedback and really provide for them, as close as possible, a Warriors basketball camp experience virtually. So those are the things we're thinking about right now.
That's awesome. And I'm eager to dive in and explore some more of those themes. One is recognizing that if it's not programming as usual, how do you start to think differently about what those programs might look like? And second is the way that you're thinking about virtual training and virtual programming and given how you're thinking about the facility anyway, in terms of technology, interactivity, I imagine there's some things you're learning about, which we'll get into in a second. I'm excited to invite RaShauna into the conversation. RaShauna is someone that I got to know when she was first working in the NBA with the Hawks, and now she's doing amazing things down in Miami as the director of youth programs for the Dolphins, overseeing all camps and community programs. And she also, like Jeff, was a pretty good college basketball player herself, and has that illustrious career to kind of point to, in addition to the fact that she spent lots of times in different kinds of organizations. So RaShauna, I'll turn that question to you, which is from a football perspective, right? Unlike the Warriors dynamic, which is they've completed a lot of the season but not all the way through it. In your case, the NFL hasn't started. The belief and hope is that it will at some point. How are you being impacted by it? And maybe just start by giving us a little context about what the Dolphins have been doing in youth up until this crisis.
Yeah, sure. So I think the Junior Dolphins program really is focused on teaching, learning, and playing the game in a fun, safe environment. So that's kind of our mission and what we're trying to do. And under that, we kind of work in 4 major areas. That's really our camp program, similar to what Jeff was talking about: spring break camps, Thanksgiving camps, holiday camps. And then we also work on an education piece. So one of our missions is to help educate both parents, coaches, and players really on that health and safety part of the game. And so we do a really big coaches clinic, and that was one of our events that we had to cancel. We actually have the biggest coaches clinic in the NFL with over 800 youth and high school coaches. So to have to cancel that a month away from it happening obviously throws a wrench in our goal of really trying to help drive some education, because football is a sport that requires that. So I think that's one major way that we're impacted, right? And then there's from the business part of that, there's sponsors that are involved that you kind of have to figure out solutions for as well, which throws another wrench in the youth sports realm, and another just element to think about. So we focus on that as well, but we also have leagues that we run. So we run a girls flag football league out of our facility. That's a huge initiative for us. Girls flag football is growing as a youth sport, but also hoping that it will transition to a collegiate sport. And so it's important for us to be driving some ways for girls to participate in that. So having to cancel that is another big thing for us. That's run out of, like I said, our facility, and we typically run that in the summer. And then the last part for us is all of our community efforts. And that's really where we've had to focus when it comes to this pandemic, is focusing on how we can support the community aspect of youth football right now, knowing that the actual activity part of what we do is kind of on hold. And so those are the 4 major areas that we focus in. And I kind of talked a little bit about the things that we've had to cancel, and the ways that we've really tried to deal with that is using technology. So things like this Zoom calls, and I'm sure as the other teams are using, using our best asset, which is our players really, and for us, our cheerleaders as well, and driving some content that way. So we've been thinking through if there's programs where our players can kind of Zoom bomb, right? That's the thing that they had been talking about. Some of our high school teams as they're having some Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So continuing to find unique ways that our players and our cheerleaders can be engaged with the youth football community has been huge.
That's great. And one of the questions I have is, as you've thought about this, this leadership role that you played within the NFL on coach training, how are you interacting with coaches right now? And not necessarily in the broader community, but are there ways that you think you're about supporting coaches or thinking about supporting coaches as part of that beyond the Zoom bombing techniques?
Yeah, so I think the way right now we've talked about turning our coaches clinic into a digital series. Is there content that we can be releasing slowly? The cool thing about our coaches clinic is our Dolphins coaches do get involved with that. So they do different sessions throughout the day. And we've worked with some other wonderful partners like Positive Coaching Alliance, which I know you guys have aligned with as well. But we have talked about how to turn some of those things digital, and then also being smart about how we release those from a marketing standpoint, figuring out a cadence, or is there a time that there's a good time to release it. I think being timely and consistent is important with technology. So we're trying to figure out what that looks like, and we haven't quite come to it yet, but we're very crawl before we run. So we are definitely not first to the party on things. We try to figure out the best way to do it so that once we do it, we don't have to do a lot of shaping and shifting as we're going. We feel good about the plan that we're moving forward with. So we, and also because we're not in season, right, we can support with more fun content. We've done things like coloring books online for students that's come from our general Miami Dolphins account. And we're also unique in that we don't have a youth specific social platform. So everything that we do is from our major Miami Dolphins account. So it's just interesting too, because we get a lot of engagement on that front, where we're providing content that may be youth focused, but it's coming through the Miami Dolphins. So it gives us a wide lens to kind of reach out to people.
Yeah. I appreciate RaShauna, and I'm eager to get back to you. And one of the interesting dynamics is how you're thinking about the summer. And, again, the hope is that the games, the season happens as planned. So how are you navigating that as it relates to some of the programs you might be running, leagues, camps, and otherwise? I'm going to bring Claire into the conversation. And I should disclose the Dodgers are actually investors in our business. And I've gotten to know Claire through that process and all the great work that I've seen them do. And it's, no doubt as an organization, you all have always been innovative. And I think, Claire, you bring that kind of innovative spirit into your role and helping kind of be the senior manager of business development and strategy and overseeing a lot of the work that's being done on the youth side. I think you have over 6 years that you kind of draw upon. You actually worked in professional golf. You worked at the University of Miami. So you have a lot of different experiences that you can draw upon on this time. So maybe the first thing is, Claire, how would you kind of articulate the broad footprint that the Dodgers have with respect to the youth strategy across the foundation and across the team? What have you been doing in youth? And then we can talk a little bit about how that's shifted in response to the crisis.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. So yeah, like you mentioned, I'm lucky I get to kind of touch a little bit what Jeff does, a little bit what RaShauna does, and look at our business holistically and see all the different areas that we're engaging with our youth fans. So right now, we had been holding, maybe this is something you guys do at your organizations too, but we have bi-monthly youth meetings where every stakeholder in our organization who has a program that involves kids, we all get together to align and make sure that we all know what everyone's up to and that our message is consistent, and our fans are hearing from the Dodgers in one voice. And so we've aligned that group really tightly right now. We're taking those calls as often as we possibly can, minimum once a week. And we've kind of dedicated Sundays to our youth education days. So like RaShauna was saying, we're fortunate that we're using our main profile channels to send these messages out. So every Sunday we have an all RU email that we've dedicated a new initiative every week that we're putting out to our fans, and then also tailoring information to our Junior Dodgers, which is our kids club. And so we have some really cool programs that we've been able to use this time as to really focus on fan development and kind of, our season was about to start. I think everyone knows we're in limbo right now. And we had, all the work we were doing was really about in person at the stadium, what's our 2020 season experience going to be for kids. And then the second part of that plan on our roadmap was the online aspect and engaging with us. If you're not going to be at the stadium, or if you can't be in California, how do we engage with those fans? So we kind of just flip-flopped our strategy so that we're focusing on our online, broad scope presence, and still trying to, tweak and come up with what we can do when we are back in the stadium. To Jeff's point too, kind of trying to get ahead of how are people going to want to interact with us? How do we need to adjust so that things are more sanitary, even if, the CDC says everything's okay and everyone can go back to things that we were used to doing. I still think that people are going to have a sense of awareness that things that we may have just done because that's how we always did it, we might think a little differently moving forward. So we're trying to put a plan together now so that whenever we do go back to hosting fans at our stadium or at our camps or at any event, that we're not just blindly jumping back in, and that we're prepared and thinking through every little detail.
Claire, maybe you can elaborate a little bit when you think about those online benefits associated with the Kids Club as you rolled it out. What are some of those opportunities for online engagement outside of what's happening on the social channels on Sunday?
Sure. So, the first thing we did was what I think a lot of teams are doing is putting out a lot of online worksheets and resources and games. So we have been throwing a ton up on our account. What we did to kind of drive registrations, because I think, in this time, obviously, revenue streams are kind of pausing at the moment, but if you can still get fans to sign up for your lists, and maybe new fans are looking for something to do with their kids. So we've been really lucky to see really solid numbers growing our kids club registration, and I think that's because we've tailored it in a way that there are some things that you could just go to Dodgers.com and you can pull these worksheets and have fun, but we tease you with those, and if you sign up for our free club, it's totally free. Then you have access to, 20, 30, they're coming every week at you. So that's been awesome. We're also doing a few different type of games. So you guys have maybe seen bear hunts through neighborhoods where people are putting teddy bears in their windows. So we made our own version called I Spy Something Blue. And we've encouraged families to put Dodger gear in their windows. And so if you're on your safe social distance walk, you can kind of find your fellow Dodger fans. We're also recognizing that, like RaShauna was saying, this is the time where little leagues would be playing, and your t-ball teams, your baseball teams, your softball teams. and all those kids are at home and they're bummed out. And so we're going to market pretty soon. So teaser with something where we're going to be recognizing all those kids that would be playing right now and dedicating a page on our website and putting some social and some videos together highlighting them. So that's going to be exciting. They're going to be able to just share their information with us. And then we want to know everyone's stories and kind of the angle of we wish we were playing too, and we know you guys would be, so let's kind of unite together and recognize all the athletes out there.
That's awesome. And it's neat to hear you describe some of those ideas, because none of them are exclusive to the period we're in, right? You could certainly think about how they're permanent features of what you're doing. And the marketing term for what you're describing is the idea of gated content, right? Which is, we've got some information providing for free, but if you want more information, just leave your email address, which is a pretty common kind of technique that I think works in the online marketing world. And building your database of folks on the Kids Club and things like that is a neat strategy, I think, right now in responding to the circumstances. So a couple of things. I'm going to start kind of post some questions that were shared in advance, and then also invite anyone as part of this conversation to go to that questions module on the right-hand side in the GoToWebinar. Go ahead and submit that question so we can hear what your ideas are or some questions you have for the panelists. But I'll start with something that I think both Jeff and Claire spoke to, and get everyone's take on this, which is when you think about the programming, we can't be sure when they're coming back, right? There's hopefully optimistic signs that now they say that maybe the worst part is over. But you both made the observation that parents' expectations may be a little bit different. And so even if all of a sudden we're in a position where we can leave our houses, what does that mean about what consumer expectations are? So Jeff, I'll start with you, which is how are you thinking about what those adaptations mean? How are you actually going about figuring out what parents might want, what families might want? When you think about smaller footprint camps or some of these other ideas, how are you actually figuring out how to make that decision?
Well, my first perspective of that comes from my own kids. I have a 12-year-old daughter that plays year-round basketball, and just thinking as a parent, what are the things I'm comfortable with her doing once it's lifted and they can get back out on the court. So that initially shapes my view. My team has been meeting pretty much daily, just talking about the different opportunities we have. One of the things that we're doing at our practice facility that I think is going to really do well for us right out the gate is we did install some Shoot 360 technology, which Jeremy's familiar with. And for Claire, it's just kind of like batting cages, but for basketball. So we have shooting cages and we have skill cages. So each one is their own designated area. So we'll be able to kind of get Shoot 360 off the ground, 10 kids at a time, where they're all separated, where, there's no high fives, there's no huddles, there's no, passing or sharing the basketballs. And I think, things like that are going to be kind of the gradual thing that we want to start with. And then as, things improve and situations get better and things like that, we can get to more, typical basketball play. I think playing 5-on-5 games right out the bat is probably something we're not going to be able to do. So we're just trying to be creative and figure out how we can use the technology we do have and have recently installed to kind of get them through the door, to start making them feel comfortable and give them some options that, are not your typical basketball options.
Yeah, I think it's neat to think about the Shoot 360. It's really impressive technology. And I think the idea of that kind of interactivity, which almost mirrors like a video game, allows for that small group training. One of the things that we're seeing in talking to a lot of organizations is they think that may be one of the things that comes back is individual training or small group training that leads into kind of other kind of bigger footprint programs. I think the one thing working in everyone's favor, especially with a 4- and 2-year-old that may burst through the door at any given moment, is that parents are very eager to get them out of their purview if they can. And certainly there's a lot of comfort in the way that a professional team would go about handling the situation and the precautions and everything else that I think works very much in favor of your brand. RaShauna and Claire, how are you all thinking about adapting the kind of programs you're running? Is it waiting so you can kind of turn the dial back on the camps or leagues or programs, or are there other ways that you're thinking about what the programming look like in an environment where parents may still be a little bit reluctant or cautious about where they're sending their kids? RaShauna, you have a take on that?
Sure, I had to unmute myself for a second. Sorry about that. Yeah, we started to think through the same thing. Like, what does it look like for football right now? Like the second day of our camp is all competition based. So it's a good chance for us, right, to get multiple kids with the football in their hand. Obviously, when you have 7 kids on the field, not everybody gets to touch football, especially when you're little. And there's one quarterback who like the throw is maybe like 2 yards on a good day. So we've started to think through, do we make the competition day, which is more individual based programming, do we make the competition day longer? Do we make that really, really skill based? Do we do things where there's more skill training, that's agility and more things that we can do with less equipment, if that makes sense? Obviously, again, with football, there's a lot of, it's a contact sport, right? So trying to figure out what those contactless activities are when we bring them together. And then we also focus a lot on the character development piece. So finding ways to infuse some of those character development lessons through some contactless games is really, really big for us, and making sure that we're not losing that aspect as we're continuing to kind of figure out how to get back to the football side.
Claire, how are you thinking about it, especially when it comes to camps, which I know are a big part of what you do?
Yeah, so I think baseball is a little lucky that it's not a contact sport per se. There is obviously, I mean, the most simple thing is playing catch, and that involves sharing a baseball. So that is tough because, you know, you're not wearing a glove when you're throwing. We've kind of just started talking through all these things. We're lucky we have, I don't know if anyone's familiar with our Dodgers Training Academy. And so that's a whole another business unit that leads all of our actual instruction and playing. And so we're lucky we can lean on our internal experts to kind of navigate this for us. But yeah, some of the things that are coming up are, you know, we're lucky people usually use their own baseball bat, their own helmet, their own glove, their own things. It's really those skills that you would be throwing something back and forth. If someone's trying to pitch to you, you know, is the person who's throwing the ball the only one who can go pick up the balls? And no one wants to pick up the balls, but, you know, you might have to. And, you know, thinking through spacing and I think, again, our sport can lean itself to making adjustments that won't feel so foreign from the way camps were typically run or how the game is typically played. But there are still things that, you know, right, even if we go back to normal, it wouldn't be right to go right back to how we did it before. So,
yeah. One thing, it seems like there's also this way that, so you've got the question of the programs that you're running. You know, one question tactically that I think has come in that people are curious about is, you know, usually registration is when you're taking registration now for your camps and clinics. So curious, one, are you delaying that period of time? Did you take registration and are you holding that and still taking deposits with the idea that you might refund if that doesn't happen or shift to more virtual model? But how are you navigating this question on payments and requiring kind of when those payments might be due? Curious to know, Jeff, I'll go to you. I know given how big your campus infrastructure, how have you navigated that kind of payment timing as you think about this?
Well, thankfully, we have a great new platform called League Apps that's really helping us get through this. But in addition to that, you know, when we canceled our spring camps, you know, obviously, you know, we canceled those sessions. So we gave all of our camp families the option of a full refund, camp credit, or to switch to a future session. So them having those options, obviously, the vast majority chose the full refund, but we did see, you know, a good number of them choose that credit route. When we do, if we do have to cancel our summer sessions and go through that same process, we're thinking about some different options in terms of incentivizing that credit option. So we'd still give them that option for a full refund, but say they paid $400 for a camp. Maybe if they choose the credit option, we allow that credit to go up to $450. So to, you know, allow that money to kind of stay within us and kind of steer that towards our future programming, so we don't take as big of a hit. But then for the folks that really do need that refund, you know, maybe they're out of work or whatever it might be, we're going to make sure that we make that happen. But you know, as RaShauna and Claire can probably attest to as well, you know, once everything kind of went down over the course of the last month, you know, our registration's still been available for summer sessions, but it pretty much came to a screeching halt just because all of the uncertainty and not knowing when we will be able to resume.
So how have you navigated that in terms of payment timing and refunds? What's been the approach the Dodgers taken?
Yeah, so unfortunately for us, we were about to go on sale with our summer sessions. We had just gotten all our approvals and everything was lined up and ready to go. So some way it's a blessing in disguise. We didn't have the customer service tasks at hand to kind of navigate that. We do have a interest form on our website where the registration would have been. So anyone that was looking for it, or we had teased that it was coming, there wasn't nothing there for them. We at least have an active form where they can give us their info, and they'll be the first to know when anything is available to know. I will admit that form is not seeing very high traffic. I don't think this is the priority on anyone's minds besides ours right now. But we have done the credit element in the past for people who, last minute something came up and they couldn't make it to camp. And we have actually seen a few people reach out to us who know they had that stored and are now asking if we can give them that in cash because, their circumstances have changed. And we want to be really conscious of our community and our fans and do what we can to support them, but obviously trying to keep as much in our fold as we possibly can to sustain, our programming.
Yeah. RaShauna, anything to add in terms of how the Dolphins are approaching it different than we've heard?
Yeah, so we go on sale pretty early. We try to go on sale before the holiday break for school, but we typically are on sale by January 1. So we have a bunch of people that are already signed up for camp. The route we took, actually, this is a little granular, but we allow payment plans through League Apps because it's a wonderful platform. But the payment plan schedule, there was actually one scheduled for April 15th. And so we took a look at our business and said, we need to come up with a response to this because it was set up for automatic payments. So what we don't want, especially when we live in an area where tourism is our major income in the state, and a lot of people are getting hit when they can't travel. And so we decided to send out an email and just say, hey, you have the option. We didn't want to give them the option to cancel right there in that email. So we just told them, hey, we'll defer your payment. The next payment won't be until May 15th, with the last payment moving to right before camp starts. So it kind of gives them wiggle room to see what happens. It gives us wiggle room to figure out if we're going to actually host camps. And then we've started to talk about internally, similar to Jeff, what does it look like if camps do come back only halfway through the summer? Are we offering a credit, knowing that at some point sports will come back and we have some other assets that we can make them a part of? Or what adjustments can we make that we're not hopefully having to refund the whole piece, because we are still part of a business. But
Right.
I think the big thing is just continuing to communicate with parents as soon as letting them know that they know we're sensitive to their needs, and then hopefully trying to find solutions that work for both of us.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing is I think when you all come back, there'll be a lot of demand for your programs. I think people will view them as safe as any of the options that are out there. So I think the idea of having people hold their spot, right? The communicating scarcity, even if that means they're, I think Claire has the interest form, and maybe there's a way of having them sign up, indicate their interest, or maybe put a small deposit down. There may be interesting ways to do that as we kind of come out of it and people see a likely open date, in which case maybe there's ways to build advanced interest that way. A few other topics I want to kind of pull out that are reflective of some of the questions that are coming in on that questions tab. One is on virtual training. So Jeff, you alluded to this in terms of the Instagram kind of workouts. What have you learned about the way you're executing virtual training? That you might give in terms of advice about what you think the opportunities, the potential, the limitations are, as other teams might think about how they might use Instagram Live or other kinds of platforms to make that happen?
Well, I think for us, it's a great example of how, necessity drives you to do some things that you weren't typically planning on doing. This wasn't something that was in our plans, even a month ago to start this up. Everything that we've done in the past has been around kids coming to our facilities or coming to our camp locations and getting that instruction from our coaches in person. So as we look at the situation we're in, we no longer can do that. So this was kind of our only option to stay engaged, to keep our kids active. But I think what's great about it and what we've learned is now this is something that we can take once we kind of return to somewhat of normalcy and continue this as an element within our programming. We can now, still offer these sessions for maybe kids that are, just outside our market or maybe don't live, close enough to attend the camp. We've had kids that are tuning in for our workouts from Spain, from West Virginia, from all over the country, Singapore. And so it's been really neat to see that interaction, and just gives us another avenue that we can, engage with, young players that love the game and love the Warriors.
One thing I'll offer up as a suggestion for all the pro teams out there is that if you think about individual programming, whether it's the grassroots organizations or pro teams, there's constraints that you have, right, in terms of the coaching, in terms of the space that you have and everything else. So it makes sense that there's so many different organizations, so many different choices that people have to choose from. But when it comes to virtual training, it does not make sense that every organization is going to be great at virtual training or going to figure this out. And so if you're going to pick who's going to be the best at virtual training, you would imagine that is a capability that the pro teams are going to have unique opportunities for when it comes to leveraging your specific youth staff, whether it's your coaching staff, whether it's players. There's things that you can do and things that you could offer up that is scalable beyond the typical reach of just your programs itself, even to the point where you might consider how that is a resource to any of the grassroots organizations that are out there that are looking to give something that's relevant, that has content, but your capabilities of producing those things may be far more sophisticated. So just an observation that I don't think it's one of these things where every organization becomes great at virtual training. It makes more sense that a few will be much better at it, and then other organizations will really rely on or license or partner with them to make that happen. And we're already seeing that dynamic start to emerge. So that's another reason I think to lean in and think about how you're creating it. Claire, you talked about, I think, a smart strategy of how to look at this as an opportunity to acquire and build relationships, acquire data, acquire fan club members. And a lot of that is driven through some of the social engagement. What have you learned about what's working in an environment like this and what's not working in an environment like this? Some of the things that failed and some of the things that you think have more traction around your strategy to engage these kids and families more socially and do it in a way that hopefully lets you capture data or build followers.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this time is everything is happening really quickly, so you can really react almost instantaneously if something is not working well. And also, the good thing about technology and social media is you get real-time results. So, for example, we are using different channels to just see where people are engaging. So we put in an Instagram story, swipe up new activities like available now, and somehow that it had the highest engagement on that story versus posting it on the actual page. So all of your fans might be different, but we've just seen that is more of a short form 24-hour thing that people saw it there and went straight to the website and engaged with us. And then as far as the video content, we found that putting those on YouTube, even if it was like a live training session that happened on Instagram Live, we've been able to record and put those on YouTube so people can go find them afterwards, or if they didn't know about it and they found out later. There's some evergreen material that's sitting there and building upon itself. Apologies, my trash man is here and I don't know if you can hear that. But I think that we are trying to be thoughtful as we're putting things together, and like I mentioned, it's all happening very quickly where we're used to kind of drawing out these strategies, but still trying to think through, is this something that is really going to appeal to the masses? This time is really an opportunity to speak to as many people as possible, where our in-person events restrain us. And so if it's something that, we put through the filter and it comes back with, this really isn't going to be successful right now, we kind of all scrap it before we throw it out to the public.
Yeah, a couple of things I think are important nuggets to distill that certainly I think aligns with the experience we have at League Apps. One is this is an opportunity for a lot of experimentation. So the key thing is to do these things and kind of measuring in a sense what works. I think the other thing I think you said that I think is really important when you talked about creating these Instagram Live videos, then taking that recording and then putting them on YouTube is one of the lessons I think we've learned when it comes to content creation, especially from a marketing perspective or programming perspective, is you got to think about two things. You got to think about content creation, and then you think about content distribution. And so if you have this idea of a virtual workout, one of the things is like, okay, what's going to go on to actually making that happen, right? Or that piece of content, that coaching expertise. And then what are all the different places that can live? Because you might have an audience on Instagram, you might have an audience on Snapchat, you may have an audience that you communicate via email or via your website. You may even have people that are reps on your team that can actually call out and make that available to local organizations. So whatever the strategy might be, I think thinking about if I'm going to put this effort to just create this content, what are all the different ways that I can distribute that? And thinking about the assets of the organization that maybe you normally wouldn't have access to. but you do now. I think in the case of, for example, the main social handles as opposed to just your youth ones. So I think there's lots of good advice that you're giving there, Claire. RaShauna, one of the other questions I think that's coming in quite a bit as part of this discussion is the relationship with what's happening in the grassroots, right? And one of the things is, are you receiving insights from the Pop Warners of the world, or NFL Flag, or what's the direction or feedback you have about how the grassroots are approaching this? Do you have a perspective on that? And then on the flip side, what is the strategy you have to add as much value to the grassroots right now? What are you seeing as an opportunity to make an impact?
Yeah, so right now we actually have a group of stakeholders. So our group of stakeholders is comprised really of tackle football presidents, flag football presidents, the school districts, their athletic directors for the entire school district. And so what we have found is it's really, really good for us to have that group that we're tapping in. We have some expectations of them every month. That we're talking to them. So it's been really good to hear from them what's going on. So I think that's first, right? We had to have the infrastructure to be able to talk to the people in our market that are invested the way that we are in growing the game within our market. So right there, we just have built-in relationships that we've been able to call. I think, believe it or not, the grassroots has been very quiet for us. A lot of the tackle and flag, like what we've heard is we've had to cancel our season. We don't know what's going on with our season, and they're just kind of in holding as well. But the ones that I think that have been very helpful for us are the school systems. So we work with not just the actual superintendents and the school boards, but their athletic departments. And so what we've heard is things like, can you help us with virtual graduation, right? Like kids that aren't getting to go to prom or to graduation, how do we help put a Dolphins flair on their graduation, whether that's social stickers where they're customized for every school that kids can then post. And so we're staying relevant in that way. And then another big thing for us, which is not really an answer to the question, but I do think it's maybe relevant for the group, is as you have assets coming up. So for us, the draft is coming up and the draft will be virtual. And so we've tried to figure out what assets does the league have, what assets does the Dolphins have, and how can we kind of tag on to those things so that that actual junior programming is not getting lost or forgotten about in this time. So we've tried to figure out, okay, from our virtual draft, there's going to be some sort of commercials. Everybody still has to pay bills. So can we find a way to build in a youth commercial? Is there some type of banner that we can put up or something along those lines? So I think it's finding assets within the assets that are already happening to continue to tell a youth sports narrative.
Yeah. Claire, you mentioned some of the stuff that you've done with respect to the little leagues and local organizations. I know I was part of a great event that you guys did at Dodger Stadium. It seems like a year ago, but I think it was just a couple months ago, where you brought out a lot of great organizations, rolled out a new strategy to engage them as part of the Junior Dodgers efforts, and they were buying ticket sales, and there were all these other benefits that were part of that. How are you trying to support those grassroots organizations, and what's the strategy been there? Not so much the parents and families, but the organizations themselves.
Yeah, well, thank you again to you and your team for helping us with that. And apologies, because now the recycle man is here. But no, it's a really good question. It's something we've actually talked about with our group sales team and actually our tours team. Our tours groups do a lot of field trips, and like you mentioned, we were just kicking off these 2 new fundraising opportunities for youth sports teams to sell Dodger tickets and do a fundraiser, and also schools. So we are actually using this time to build the relationships, because some of those were brand new relationships that kind of kicked off with the League Apps event that we hosted at the stadium. And what's been great is that kind of the work that the Junior Dodgers youth group team is doing as far as making these, worksheets. Our foundation just kicked off LA Reads, as you mentioned at the beginning of the call, which is a reading initiative. We're able to leverage those directly to schools and league organizers, and be like, hey, we have resources, we have things that we can provide to you. If there's something you guys are particularly looking for, let us know, and we can try and tailor something to your audiences. And we've actually had a lot of different independent companies reach out to us who are like, we make math problems about baseball stats, or we do this, and we've been wanting to get involved. And so it's actually been really helpful in regards to building up those relationships and showing them that we're a partner that they can rely on during this time. And I think that that's going to help us in the long run you know, to just be someone that they trust and, you know, want to continue to work with when baseball's back in season.
Yeah. Jeff, anything to add from the basketball side in terms of how you're engaging or seeing the challenges or opportunities to work with more affiliates or grassroots organizations?
Yeah, I mean, as you talk about the grassroots, you know, we've recently been added to the Junior NBA's flagship network, and it's really been beneficial for us to kind of hear how each of those groups are operating and are thinking about operating once everything gets lifted. You know, these represent, you know, 15 of the best in class youth basketball organizations across the country. Some of them are tournament operators. Some of them, you know, operate their own facilities. So just hearing their perspective on, you know, the things that they think they may be able to do or may not be able to do definitely provides us some perspective. You know, if you look at the tournament scene, you know, is it plausible or is it even possible for, you know, groups to start hosting tournaments that don't have parents or fans in the building to watch kids play the games? You know, I know that's, you know, a huge revenue generator for those tournament operators is having those, you know, fees that are paid by the folks that are there to see those games. So how does that all work? So it's just things that we're trying to wrap our heads around right now and get some ideas on how we can combat some of these things, but really has provided us some great perspective.
Yeah, a couple things I'll offer up what I see on the grassroots side and maybe food for thought as each organization thinks about the opportunities. So the first I'd say is that there's really an absence of authority that's being demonstrated or revealed during a crisis, right? Majority of these organizations are in their own. They may have a sense of like saying, hey, literally, you're not able to run tournaments or this is being canceled. But in reality, these organizations are fending for themselves to try to figure out their own viability, their own response, and in general, they're trying to navigate it themselves. We've seen a lot of success as an organization at League Apps to try to influence that. But I do think that there's an opportunity for you all to kind of take this opportunity to assert the authority and really on the backs of the great work that each of the professional leagues I think have done in youth. The second thing is that they need experts. Like there's expertise that you all might have or can unlock that they don't have access to, right? And especially when it comes to virtual training or when it comes to social media or content creation, or maybe even go even further about how they're navigating, you know, the financial dynamics here. I think thinking about what is the expertise that you can provide those organizations is probably a really good way to build goodwill, to add value to affiliates, and to make a lasting impact. They also aren't in a great position to create high quality content. To the point that Claire made, your ability to create content, their mechanism for distribution, I think can be really, really powerful, right? You take the virtual training or things that you're doing and you let them, you know, help to brand that and distribute that in a way that in partnership with you, that again is a good way of spreading kind of your word. And if there's ability to drive people back to your website to sign up for more things, I think that could be advantageous for you. And I think the last is just to anticipate a lot of consolidation, right? The number of organizations that are furloughing, that are going bankrupt, that are shutting down, I think that'll be more pronounced on the recreational side as much as anyone. The organizations that are going to thrive are the ones that are a little bit more entrepreneurial, like that Junior NBA flagship network. So I think it's a question of how do you align yourself with them, and one, recognize there's a vacuum that you'll probably be able to fill with your programs when those organizations may not return. And two is what are the different people you want to align yourself with moving forward as well. So all I think important kind of considerations moving forward. You know, one of the questions that people have been asking or submitting is just a question of, are you figuring this out on your own? You know, how are you deciding what to do? Are you getting guidance from the leagues? Are you getting guidance from other teams that you're talking to? You know, RaShauna, what's the way that you're approaching this? Is the NFL giving a lot of guidance here, or are you mostly trying to figure this out on your own?
Yeah, so the NFL is giving a little bit of guidance. They are the governing body, so they do have to, I should say the head of us, so they do have to kind of give us a little something, so they are. But I think it's just knowing that everybody's an information source. I mean, we get good ideas from our social team. We get good ideas from the superintendent. We have a bunch of nonprofits that we work with as well. We're using them as information sources. We really are just knowing that everybody is a true information source, and we're at the point where like a good idea truly can come from anywhere. And so we're taking all of that in and really trying to take and sift through what we think is plausible for us and then executing on it. But a lot of, like I said, that stakeholders group has been big for us because we're calling those people and saying, hey, let us tell us what your parents are saying. Tell us, you know, because while we have our camp database, they're the ones that are talking to parents every single day. So we're just trying to figure out where the experts are and knowing that we're not always going to be the experts and making sure the experts are giving us some feedback.
Yeah, I think it's a great point in this idea of, you know, one of the things I think about crisis leadership, you know, I think about three pillars to that. One is information, right? One is communication, one is management. And so in the context of information, what is the way that you're gaining the information to get insights, as Jeff was saying, how parents, you know, might be thinking differently about this, or RaShauna, your point about what's happening at grassroots. So I think it's it's a really important point to kind of underscore is what are the ways that you're getting that information, and recognizing there is no one place for answers, right? So it's a question of how you figure that out from each other. That is a mirror of what's happening in the crisis, right? Even doctors, are talking to other doctors to figure out what's going on. So the more that you create that connectivity, the more you have that information to be able to react to. Jeff, one technical question that came in for you on the virtual training piece is, are you guys running virtual training from home, or are you going into a facility or some kind of court to run those virtual trainings? But what is the best way that you're leading those virtual trainings with your staff?
So it's been a combination so far. So the first couple we did from our facility. We had a couple of our staff members go in and do it there. And then last week, one of our staff members was back home with her parents, and she did those workouts from her garage. So I think, showing folks that it can kind of happen anywhere is something that's crucial for us. And we were able to kind of display that. And then just to go back a little bit to what you were saying about providing expertise, I think one asset that we're all going to have, working for a professional team is we're going to see, once everything's lifted and our teams and players go back to the court or the field, we're going to see the protocols that are in place that ensure a safe environment for them when they return to action. So I think for all of us in youth basketball programming, if we can adhere to those same guidelines and protocols that are being set forth for the professional players, that's going to give parents, peace of mind and feel like, hey, if this is what Stephen Curry's doing to get back out on the court, that's going to be appropriate for my kid too. And I feel good about this. So I think that's something that we can certainly lean on.
That's great. When in terms of the final question I'll pose to the group as we wrap is, I talked about the theory of the surviving, the thriving, this idea of necessity being the mother of all innovation, right? And each one of you, it's neat to see how your organizations are responding, which is reflective both of the organizational culture and certainly your leadership individually. When you think about this, and you're looking back on this a year, what do you think is going to be different about your organization? What is the way that you're innovating and learning that you think is a permanent feature about what you're going through that will make you stronger, make your organization stronger, by way of advice for the people that are here? Claire, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think what we've learned so far is that we can be a lot more efficient than we thought we were. Obviously we're all in our own spaces, we're all in our own kind of timelines right now, but I'm really impressed with how efficient and quickly we're able to, come up with a concept, create it, execute it, distribute it, report on it and move to the next thing. And I think, Jeremy, you mentioned some of the things that we're doing right now are strategies that we can be doing even outside of a crisis time. And I think that we've gotten to learn that, some of these projects that never really got most of our attention or were kind of on the back burner because all these other things were kind of taking priority, we're seeing that we can, kind of do it all and, really reorganize kind of how we're communicating across the company and how we're creating new processes to be, efficient and productive. And I think it's going to help us when we all come back together to just keep churning out new things and kind of push the limits on what we thought was capable before. And now we know that we're capable of a lot more.
RaShauna, what's your perspective? What's different about your organization? How are you thinking about the long-term innovations that you might be seeing from this crisis?
So I think it's been twofold for us, realizing the importance of technology and connecting with kids where they are. So even if they're not in a building, how do we find ways to connect and engage with them and where they are? So whether that's TikTok, like we are very strong on Twitter, but we've started talking about, okay, TikTok is really where our audience from a junior perspective is. How do we rev up on that end and maybe speak to them there? So that's been huge. The other thing is, like Claire said, is the processes. So we've decided this is a good time for us to put pen to paper on all those different processes that we need to have and put in place, almost like a crisis management plan, but it can be for the good things. So how do we celebrate when we have high school state champions? How do we celebrate when we have longtime coaches retire? It's things that we all are constantly doing in our business. And it's one of those things that sometimes you have people that have been in the organization for so long. So, hey, we always send them a football, or we always send them a shirt, or we always invite them out. But there's not actually a written down process that, if somebody new had to come in and help us get this off the ground, it's not really written down and formalized. So creating just a formalized process for for all of these major events in the youth football world in our market.
Yeah, I think that's great use of this time. Jeff, final word from you. What is the way that you think you're going to be permanently changed for the better through this?
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking on what RaShauna said, technology and, incorporating that into all of our future programming is going to be something huge for us. And this time has given us, some time to really think through how to best incorporate it. I think another thing for us is, in the past, we've been so consumed with the programming aspect of what we do, and we're always on the court, we're always running sessions. In a sense, it's actually kind of been refreshing for the last month to really take a step back, not have to worry about any of the programming or running of sessions or whatever it might be, staffing of sessions, and really take a deep dive into everything that we do and really look at it, from a macro level and really understand, what are going to be the strategies that are going to push us forward in the future, and how do we incorporate that into what we do. So I think that's been good for us.
Yeah, I think it's great. And look, I think I said last week, don't count the days, make the days count. I think you all are demonstrating that. A couple ways by point of summation here. I started with that Muhammad Ali quote, which is, it's not bragging if you can back it up, right? And I think that the role and the opportunity that professional teams have was always great, but is even more pronounced now because you have a grassroots ecosystem that's going to be struggling. You've got professional teams when they come back and the leagues are back and people are playing again. It's going to capture again the imagination of what's great about sports for people, that will give you that platform to engage. Jeff made the point about drafting off of all the expertise that the teams are going to have around safety and protocols, that you can represent that kind of safety to parents. And I think there's an opportunity to have a permanent leadership role within the respect of the grassroots organizations that I think need assistance, need help, and ways that you can engage, not to mention the ability to build your databases up. So I appreciate you all sharing your incredible insights there. And I want to invite everyone to kind of continue to think creatively about those opportunities. I know I've come up with a few ideas even from this that I'm going to come back at Jeff and RaShauna and Claire about what we might be able to do together as we're trying to impact the grassroots. And I'm full of ideas. Not all of them are good, but I'm full of ideas. So one thing I'll invite people to do is join that Slack group. I'll have Jamie post that to the chat tool, and we'll include that follow-up link. What we're going to do is create a specific channel just for pro teams. So you can go in there, and the only people you're interacting with are other pro teams, where you can share ideas digitally and best practices and post things to each other. So that's one thing. You can check out our blog if you want to go to blog.leagueapps.com. There's a bunch of resources, including around COVID, around how organizations are responding, a lot of town halls. So I encourage you, if there's content that's relevant that you want to distribute out to your members, feel free to do that. And we can also collaborate, I think, on some ideas. So if anyone's interested in that, just reach out to me or Mark or Casey, Jared, Jamie, anyone else on our team. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Jeff, RaShauna, and Claire for your incredible work and leadership at a time like this. And wish everyone the best of luck and continued safety, and certainly wishing for you all to kind of lead us back like the champions you are. So have a great afternoon, and appreciate everybody, and look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you, Jeremy.